All right, church. Well, we are in a series of Deeply Formed. Would you turn in your Bibles to Luke chapter 12? We're talking through different practices. Some of you remember in the early days of church, we called them spiritual disciplines or godly habits. And we're just reintroducing those again to us so that we would be with Jesus, become like him, and do as he has done. I'm in Luke chapter 12 this morning. How it's going to work is we're going to look at this parable together, and then I have three things at the end of my message that I want us to take home here today. But as I start, my family, we love card games. We were just playing a new Uno game called Uno Teams last night. But we have a card game, and it's called Cover Your Assets. Has anyone ever played this game? You know it? Okay. Wow, not as many as I thought. But this game is all about being the first person to $1 million. If you see here on the back, this is the description. Battle to become the first millionaire. It's like, wait, this is a battle? Like we're fighting for this? It goes on to say, build a stack of assets by matching sets to grow your net worth. But be careful, exposed assets atop your stack are at risk of being stolen. You gotta watch out. And the entire game is meant for you to accumulate and accumulate more and more assets so you can beat the other people. And what I love on the back here is it says ages for play. And it says 7, I don't know if we have a picture of that, 7 to 99 years of age. It's teaching us that from 7 years of age to 99, there is this lure and this desire to build things for us, to accumulate. That this morning, the practice we want to talk about is the practice of generosity. Now I know, a church talking about generosity, a lot of red flags come up, right? It's some people are really excited, and usually those are the generous people. And then there's some folks that are like, oh, another pastor talking about generosity. And then some of you are like, generosity, I have no idea what that is. There is a reason why this is one of the practices. Because our hearts are prone to mine and more. To build your net worth. To get as much as you can before someone else takes it. This scarcity mindset. I have a 3-year-old at home. His name is Michael. Do you know a conversation I've never had to have with Michael? I never sat him down and said, now, Michael, you're 3, and when your friends come over to play this afternoon and they're holding on to your toy, what you need to do is forcibly take the toy out of their hands, hold it away from them, and say, mine. I've never had to have that conversation with him. It just automatically is in his heart. And then yesterday, the second born, I'm just throwing all the kids under the bus today. There's a cookie, and there's one cookie left. One chocolate chip cookie left. And I say, you gotta give it to your brother. I didn't say how much. So he breaks the cookie. And he doesn't break it in half. He breaks 1/3 and 2/3. And which do you think he kept and which do you think he gave away to the little brother? He gave the third away while he kept more. We don't have to be taught the words mine and more. They're just a part of being born in the world we live in. Today, let me say it this way to start. Today, I'm not simply talking about money. I'm not here to make a pitch to give 10% to Calvary. Although I think you should. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm not raising money for a capital campaign. That's later this year, all right? What I'm doing today is I want us to zoom out, and I want you to catch the bug of a generous lifestyle. Not just in money, although it's part of it. I am talking about in every facet of your life, you would have this new lens by which you put on a generosity lens. From your money to your possessions, to the things in which you have. Not even that, but even to your power and the influence you hold. To the relationships that you have in your life. Every aspect of your life has an opportunity to either say mine or more, or be, it's not mine and I don't need more. I'm going to actually be generous with it. We're talking about a large conversation today. That's where Jesus points the descriptor in Luke chapter 12. And Luke chapter 12 is this, that you are never most like Jesus than when you're generous. You're never most like Jesus than when you're generous. He did not come to be served, but to serve, and here it is, give his life as a ransom for many. At the heart of the gospel is generosity. And Jesus, he is one of full giving away, and he calls us into that same relationship. And so in Luke chapter 12, we see Jesus. He is pressed in by the text at verse 1 says, thousands of people are all around him. And they're pressing in, and he's talking and teaching as he normally does. And then in chapter 12, verse 13, this dialogue happens from a random guy in the crowd. And let's find out what Jesus has to say about generosity. Verse 13, it says this. Someone in the crowd said to him, that is Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or an arbiter over you?" He said to them, "Take care. Be on your guard against all covetousness. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of one's possessions." And he told them a parable, and he said this. The land of a rich man produced plentiful. And he thought to himself, "What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops." And he said, "I will do this. I will tear down my barns, and I will build the larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. I will say to my soul, 'Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich towards God.'" Jesus is in this crowd, and this man yells out to him, "I want my inheritance." Now, in Jesus' day, a couple things were part of the culture with inheritances. Usually, the older brother got a double portion of his father's inheritance. And so this brother is most likely not the older brother, because he clearly has a problem with how the inheritance is distributed. And so here he is, he's ready to leverage a relationship with Jesus in order to gain more resources. See, he's using people to reach for resources rather than using resources to reach people. And so he says, "Give me my inheritance. Can you go tell my dad and my brother what I want?" And Jesus goes into a statement in verse 15. He says, "Take care." The word there in the original is actually to see. Get your eyes wide open. Watch out. Think clearly about these matters. Be on guard. The back of this is battle to become the first millionaire. Jesus is saying there's a different battle, and it's not to get more possessions and wealth and to say mine and more. It's actually to make sure your heart does not be possessed with this word covetousness. Covetousness. The original would be the word greed. It's this insatiable desire for more. More. I gotta have just a little more. John D. Rockefeller in 1800s, 1900s in America, richest man during that period of time. The media pressed in on him, and he said, yes, how much is enough? And his classic response was, just a little bit more. How much is enough? I need more. An insatiable appetite for more. And Jesus says, here's the point, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of one's possessions. Your life has a grander meaning in the world than what you have in your bank account or what possessions you own. Or to say it another way, what you have is not who you are. What you have is not who you are. The scriptures teach this, that man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. The lure in our world today is that in order to have more, you'll be more secure, you'll have more status, you'll be more stable. And Jesus is saying, you need to depend all those things on me. I am the one that gives all of that, not these things. And if you believe in those things, they will always leave you wanting more. What you have is not who you are. Ultimately, this comes back to an identity. Like, who does God say you are? You are a son, a daughter of His. It's not about what you possess or hold. It's what has God said about you. Although it feels good, though, to be recognized for the accomplishments and the success we have. But God's economy and the world's economy is just totally different. God's looking inside the heart. Man's looking on the outside. And what we need is a pleasing heart that is alignment with God. He goes on to say a parable. A parable is a wisdom. It's a made-up story. Jesus wants to give an illustration to this thing of you are not what you have. And to do that, he makes up this story on the spot called a parable. And he goes in first to say that there was the land a rich man produced plentiful. Now the temptation for us as we read this text is we look at it and say, well, I'm not rich. This isn't really a parable for me. I'm not rich. I don't have a mansion. I don't have all of this stuff. I'm not rich. And yet, compared to the rest of the world, Americans are vastly rich. So before we move past and think this is a parable for someone else, it's actually for us today. And he says that this rich man, he said after having all of this possessions and wealth, what am I to do with what I have? And he says, I need more. I need to earn just a little bit more. And what happens here is count how many eyes he uses. Count how many eyes. It says, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he says, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build large ones. And there I will store all of my grain. And I will say to, it's like, how many eyes was that? It's a lot. And so you're looking at it, and whose did he ultimately think his money and possessions was? Mine. He thought it was his. As we think about this concept of generosity, it starts at a fundamental principle: nothing we have is ours. It's all from God. God gave you the intellect to have the career you have, to make the wealth that you have, to buy the things that you have. He's the one who gave you the gifts and the talents that are inside of you. And what he wants more than anything is for you to leverage those gifts and those talents and be generous to the world. That they would share with the world what God has placed inside of you. And so here he's like, these are all mine. And Jesus is saying, no. If you think it's yours, you're thinking incorrectly. Nothing you have has not yet first been given to you. And so he says, I'm good. I'm going to lay up for my eat, drink, and be merry. You think about this, it's like, well, this is just a made-up story. This doesn't happen today, right? Like, this is an ancient story from Jesus. And it's interesting because I was driving down I-70. And I don't mean to throw this company under the bus, but like it literally had the exact language on the side of this building. You guys know what Dave & Buster's is? It's on I-70. Here's a picture. I think we got a picture. Dave & Buster, what does it say? Eat, drink, play, and watch. Almost like it's lifted right out of the text. Like, the desire of our heart is to just sit back on cruise control and to accumulate so that we don't actually are threatened by missing out or not having enough. And at the end of the day, Jesus is saying, don't waste your life pursuing the wrong thing. Don't waste your life pursuing the wrong thing, because in verse 20, it says, this night your soul is required from you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? You spent your whole life pursuing money and possessions, bigger barns, a bigger bank account, a bigger square feet in your home, the toys that make you feel really good. And what that is it's left him empty. He's pursued and wasted his life on the wrong thing. There's 3 books in my life that have been the most important, that have just changed the way I viewed the world. The first is the Bible. Okay, you guys knew that already. The second is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Covey. And the third is Don't Waste Your Life by John Piper. I remember reading it at age 13, and this book was written after a sermon he gave to 40,000 students in 2000. It was a student rally called the Passion Conference. And it was a blustery day, and there was wind and rain, and his notes actually get blown off the podium. And what Piper begins to preach about is 2 different types of people. And this is what he said. He said, 3 weeks ago, we got word at our church about Ruby and Laura. They'd both been killed in Cameroon. This is Piper preaching in 2000 to 40,000 students. Ruby was 80, single all of her life. She poured it out for one great thing: to make Jesus Christ known among the unreached, the poor, and the sick. Laura was a widow, a medical doctor, pushing 80 years old, serving at Ruby's side. The brakes failed and the car went over the cliff, and they were both killed instantly. And Piper looks out at the students and he says, "Was that a tragedy?" A student yells out, "No." Piper responds, "No, that's not a tragedy, but let me tell you what is." He then pulled a page out of, you ready for this? Reader's Digest. Is that still around? He read it out loud. He said this story: Bob and Penny, they took early retirement from their jobs in Northeast 5 years ago. He was 59, she was 51. They went to live in Florida. When they're on their cruise with their 30-foot trawler, they played softball and they began to collect shells. Piper told the crowd, "The American dream, come to the end of your life. This is the American dream. Come to the end of your life, your one and only life. And let the last great work before you give an account to your Creator be, I collected these seashells. I collected all this. Look what I've done." Piper says, "I submit to you, it's a tragedy. People today are spending billions of dollars to persuade you to embrace this tragic dream of more and mine. Today, I'm here to plead with you. Don't buy it. Don't waste your life." Church, I'm here to plead the same. That your life is not an accumulation of the sum of what you have, but a pursuit in Jesus. He is better. He is greater. I wonder if the old hymn helps us this morning. It says, "Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in his wonderful face." Here it is. "And the things of this earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace." The status, the wealth, the greed, the covetousness will fade away as we pursue the one that is treasured above all things, and that is Jesus, as we gaze upon his beauty, as we gaze upon the one who can satisfy our security, satisfy our status, satisfy everything we're looking for in other things other than Jesus. He can deeply satisfy. He can give us that thing we're searching for, is a contentment and a joy deep down inside. And God says to him in verse 20, "Fool." Just feel the weight of that. Stand before God and he says, "Fool." What have you gained that you can't take with you? You've calculated life in the wrong way. You haven't used wisdom. You fool. Verse 21. "So it is the one who lays up for himself treasures for himself and is not rich toward God." Who am I doing all this for? I'm going to tell you a moment that happened 2 weeks ago, and it was when I struggled to be generous. It was my two buddies. They came here from Africa, and they were telling me they both planted churches in the capital city of Ghana. And they told me of how it's really hard to get books in Africa. Like, the publishing just isn't there. So you have to ship them across the seas, and it just takes a lot. It's like way more to ship than the actual book cost itself. And so we go into my office, and they start looking through my bookshelves. And I was like, yeah, like, take whatever you want. Like, it's yours. Like, take. So they start taking books off my shelf and putting them in a stack. And then I see one of the books. A book that I'd read already, but it was given by someone that was dear to me, and my name was in the front. It was a letter written to me just from the person that meant a lot to me. And I see it there on the stack, and it's like, I don't really want to give that away. I don't want to give it away. I'm never probably going to read that book again, but I don't, what is that inside of me? And begrudgingly, not cheerfully, not joyfully, because it was already on the stack, I let it go. And I'm here to say, even in my own heart, there is this propensity to say mine and more. And the only antidote that snaps the greed and the fear in our heart is generosity. It's the only thing. It's the only resistance we have to this covetousness heart of mine and more is to give it away. And so he says, you have laid up treasures for yourself, but you're not rich towards God. What does it mean to be rich towards God? If God has everything, if it's all his, how can I possibly add anything to him? It's this: we are blessed to be a blessing. You're blessed not to receive and hold, but to actually let blessing flow through your life to the rest of the world around you. You're blessed to be a blessing. How do I be rich towards God? Is I am a conduit, I am not a cup. I'm a conduit, I'm not a cup. A cup is mine and more. And what a cup is it holds all the resources and the possessions, but nothing flows out. It's like the Dead Sea. It starts to tarnish and it starts to make our heart towards the thing Jesus is teaching against. And so what does it mean to be rich towards God, to be blessed, to be a blessing is we're not a cup, we are a conduit, where resources and things flow through us. Flows through us. God gave me that house in order to host small group. God gave me PTO, not for myself, but to go on a missions trip this summer. God gave me that bonus last year so that I could scholarship a kid to go to summer camp. You're called to be a blessing in the world around you. It's to break the greed or the covetousness that creeps into our hearts that we never had to be taught. And so will it flow through you or will it stop with you? Being a cup is resources stop with you. And the thing about this is there is a limiter here. God can't keep filling up your life with more blessing because it's tapped. There's no more room in the cup. But if you become the conduit where it runs out through you, what Proverbs says is this. Proverbs says that whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and the one who waters will himself be watered. Like the Lord wants you to be a blessing. That's how you're rich towards God. And so what can we note as we think about this season of generosity? Three things here as takeaways. First is this: wake up to what controls you. Remember, take care, Jesus said. It means to see. It means to wake up. Wake up. It's controlling your life. Wake up. What does your calendar say about how you're generous with your time? What does our credit card statement say about generosity with our money? What does people in our life and our relationships and our power and our influence say about our generosity? We've got to wake up. John Acuff, he is an author and a speaker, and he's speaking at this event, and he talks about when he was growing up, he always loved to ride a Porsche 911. And his dad and him would always talk about that. And at the end of his speech, a couple came up to him. And he said, here's the keys take it tonight and we'll see you tomorrow back at the conference. He's like, what is this? He's like, it's a portion 911. It's the thing you just talked about. He's like, I can't. He's like flabbergasted. Like, I wasn't saying that, so you'd let me use your car for 24 hours. And this is what they said to him. If you can't share something, it has too much control over you. If you can't share it, it has too much power in your life. Wake up. What has too much power in your life? The only way to snap it and break it is that you act in generously and give it away. That's wake up to what controls you. Second is leverage everything you have. Leverage everything. I'm a simple guy. I'm just going to make it really simple. The impulse at any time in your life to be generous with your time, your resources, your talents, your spiritual gifts, any impulse at all that you have to leverage that is not from Satan. It's not from him. Like, I know that for a fact. He does not want you to be generous. So, there's only one other person that wants you to be generous, and it's most likely God who's telling you to be generous. Like, you don't have to worry if you have an impulse of like, oh, I should buy lunch for my friend today. That's not from the enemy. Go and buy them lunch. If I impulse of like, I need to serve in this ministry in our church because I got some gifts. I got some things that I could offer God's kingdom. That impulse is not from the enemy. It's from the Lord. Will you leverage everything you have? Give it all. Because here, fundamentally, why radically leverage everything you have? Because you can't outgive God. He owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. He dresses the lilies. He feeds the sparrows. Fundamentally, do you believe that God is a God of abundance, not scarcity? And he has much more to give. And if it passes through you as a conduit, he will bless your life over and above and more and more. But if you see your life as a cup where it stays with you, it'll start to mess with your own heart. Leverage everything you have. And last is experience the joy of generosity. I've never met a recovering generous person. Just haven't. Like when you get the bug of when you see your world, I'm talking about the lens you put on in every aspect of your life is seen through generosity. You never will go back. I promise you. God is too big. He's too great for you to hold on, to keep hold of things, but to let things pass through you as a conduit to the world. And let me tell you, how much do you want joy in your life is tied to how generous are you. So how joyful do you want to be? How joyful do you want to be in this life? It's tied to how generous you are with everything in your life. Everything in your life. I want to end with just telling a story. It's from a book. John Reinhardt, he put this compilation of people together who have got on the other side of a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset of like, God, you're pretty big and awesome and I can't outgive you. And her name is Miss Rodriguez. She was the daughter of an immigrant family. And her dad was Cuban, her mom was Venezuelan, and they landed in Miami. At 19, she came to faith in Jesus, and God drastically transformed her life. And when she became a little bit older, she recognized that there was this dissonance with how magazines viewed women and body image. And there was a lot of airbrushing, and it just wasn't real to how actually women look. And so what she did was she says, I'm going to fix it, and I'm going to start my own magazine. She starts her own magazine that's called Dysfunction Magazine. and it takes off. And she begins to get all the stuff, the accolades, the success, and the resources that follow. So one day, her and her husband are like beginning to plan how and where they wanted to build their dream home. And they said they picked the spot. We want to go to Costa Rica. We want to build the house. And she said, I had all of the Pinterest ideas of how this is going to look. I knew how it was going to look in my life. And she said, one day God showed up. And he convicted me why I was doing all this. She says this: what if I'm not calling you to ever own a home or own anything that give you a sense of security, stability, and status, but that you'd find that in me? What if I'm calling you to live a generous life in which everything flows through you, but nothing sticks to you? Nothing sticks to you. I wonder if we could repel any stickiness today. That we would be the conduit where everything is flowing through us because we are blessed to be a blessing. So this morning, I wonder if we would stand as a response to generosity. And the response is that Jesus' words is, seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and everything else will be added to you. Would you sing here the song, The Lord Will Provide?